just a couple things I wanted you to know. Jefferson was a big fan of Virgil and all things Roman, and that shows up in this poem. But there's a reference to the tall walls of high Rome that shows up. That's actually just like the first line of Virgil's Aeneid, but translated. And then the other thing I wanted you to know is that Thomas Jefferson's great-grandfather was a man named William Randolph, and he came in 1670, and just through a series of well-connectednesses, he wasn't really well-connected, but he kind of was a social networker. He got himself a land grant and was an ambitious man. He became probably the largest slaveholder of his generation, and he managed to get extended grants of land for his children so that the Randolph family kind of ran Virginia until the Civil War. But in getting this land grant, William Randolph had a mentor whose name was Bishop George Berkeley, whose name we're familiar with, partly because he said, "Westward the course of empire makes its way." So this is a poem called A Letter to Jefferson from Monticello. 1. I climbed through what remains of your oak forest and passed again our gated family graveyard, Granddaddy's Stone and Bennett Taylor's and Cornelia Jefferson's and all the Marthas, and up the leafy slope to Monticello, and slunk into your study filled with pedestals, translations of the Bible, Livy, Herodotus, porcelain head of Voltaire as inkwell, plans for ornamental farm, nouvelle maison carrée, feeling that Rome might yet exist, forum, project of appropriation, your America. Oh, hypocrite, you make me tired. Like Whitman, you contradict yourself. 2. Images. You, lofty, curious, child of a mapmaker and New World aristocrat in your one-room schoolhouse on the Randolph land grant, learning Latin in a wilderness. Writing that in 16 generations the Aboriginal Native Americans would be like the Britons after Caesar and produce their own Cicero. Defending America's greatness from French snobbery with a moose. 9 generations later, very few of us read Cicero. Moose reclaim New England after heavy farming, and your house is a museum whose enormous gift shop sells your profile cast in crumbly chocolate, versions of your favorite peony, and umbrellas with your signature, $13.95 plus tax. Here's your garden, marrow peas, asparagus, and nubbed beginnings of the scarlet runner bean. I still hear school children asking why you needed slaves to grow them. Oh, great rhetorician, tell me, what should I say? 3. I wait where your Publix did in the balconied front hall, your wonder cabinet, recreations of buffalo skin and beaded dress, relics of tribal peoples you courted Roman style with coins. As tourists shuffle off to the last buses, I hear other silence. Behind this great hall and upstairs a dome room, a wasp-filled cuddy, the cramped quarters of your grandchildren who inherited your debt. 4. Families are still stories. Now we look for them with DNA. DNA would have fascinated you. It is symmetrical, almost rational, the way you thought America's rivers would be when you sent Lewis and Clark west to collect and cross the continent, to gather birds and roots and pipes and pelts and herbs and a ram skull that still hangs here, and dialects of tribal languages, which they subsequently lost. We haven't found those dialects. We have found DNA, and tests of it suggest, though cannot fully prove, that you had 2 families, legitimate and illegitimate, 2 rivers proceeding out from you, remembered unevenly, like names that have been saved and those that have been lost. Your family made of structured absence. Some people in your white family this makes furious. Others simply wonder what a family is. The word, like freedom, shifts beneath us, recombinant, reforming. Our country argues now about it. We can't decide what it should mean. 5. Looking at the buffalo robe that is a Shawnee map, I think about asymmetry, the ever-presence of a story we can't tell, won't see. All stories contain opposites. If you only look at DNA, you do not see the whole buffalo, country, self. Whatever frame you look through changes what you see. I admire your 17th century micrometer, your telescope. We saved your hand-cast silver spectacles, but I don't know how to see you despite wanting to, also because of your fractured families. You disappear behind your multitude of portraits. 6. So much I think of what we love about America is hybrid, like a fiddle, like rock and roll which holds African and English rhythms meeting near a river that in the 1800s you called the Cherokee, Tennessee. Beautiful and navigable, you said, aesthetic, practical, a complex way of being, a difficult pose to hold. I wondered driving down here listening to True Colors and the Christian Station, how to feed body and soul. Cherries bloom at Shadwell near the X-grounds of Lego, all the lost plantations where our many families lived. 7. In this house museum, I get special permission to touch your bedspread, to peer into your Virgil, to hunt as if for clues. It all only looks still, but was always unfinished. You designed porches and dumbwaiters, elaborate passages like those beneath the Colosseum where the Roman slaves died in the Panis et Circenses. Your craft, keeping people hidden. I ask, must beauty do this? On what must beauty rest? 8. 9 generations later, I live on a fault line. I hike through redwood sorrel, live oak, plants you'd love to name. Berkeley, where I grew up, is utopian too. Many people there build experimental gardens and devote their lives to cultivating the best kind of tomato, because one has to try to make the world a better place. And Berkeley is segregated, and its promise is unhealed. Oh, and this is also inheritance from you. 9. California's roadmap calls it geologically young and restless. It is literally in motion, and in 10 million years will be someplace else. Now it is coastlines, train tracks, mountains, underfunded universities, overcrowded prisons, factory farms, expensive cheese, pesticides and ocean, budget crises, artichokes. I learned Latin there. I recrossed the continent. I stand in your moat-filled sunlight in my solitary fancy. The doors close any moment. Mr. Jefferson, you've also left me this. I've never had to work in any field except for gardens that I planted. I roam with a lion's share of your uneven freedom. I pass as a dreamer, recording names. These are beautiful and come from many languages, reminding me how in Rome columns rear and overlap. Madrone, eucalyptus, manzanita, scars themselves unsolved or healing. O architect of hopes and lies, brilliant, fascinating, ambitious foundering father I revere and hate and see myself in.